I thought Clara was my future, until I overheard her family mocking me in their language, caught on my phone's accidental recording. Her dad called me a broke dreamer, her mum said I was too soft, and her brother laughed. He's useful for now. Clara stayed silent. That night, I tried so hard to fit in, smiling at their table, clueless to their scorn. Now her cousin's messaging me, saying Clara's gone, and I'm picking up the pieces of my life. We're so glad you're here with us today. Before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Drop the name of your city in the comments below. All right, let's get into the story. I met Clara at a poetry reading in that little bookstore on Maple Street, the one with creaky floors and coffee stains on the tables. I'm 25, a graphic designer cobbling together freelance gigs, living in a studio apartment I've patched up with second-hand shelves and a few plants I somehow haven't killed. My life's not flashy. I pay my bills, dream of starting my own firm, and get by without anyone's handouts. That night, Clara stood under a dim lamp, reading a poem about home with a quiet fire in her voice. Her Eastern European accent curled around the words, and I couldn't look away. She caught me staring afterward, and we laughed over it, swapping stories about dog-eared books and late-night snacks. We started meeting up, coffee at the diner, walks in the park where geese waddle too close. Clara's studying to be a social worker, her eyes lighting up when she talks about helping kids. She's close with her family, traditional folks from a country I won't name to keep this private. I loved hearing about their holiday feasts, even if it made me miss my own folks who live a state away. We'd cook together in my tiny kitchen, her showing me how to chop onions without crying, me burning the garlic bread but making her laugh. After a month, we were glued at the hip, watching old sci-fi flicks on my lumpy couch, her head on my shoulder. I felt like I'd found someone who saw me not just the guy scraping by, but the one with plans, heart, hopes. Still, there was a small knot in my chest sometimes. When I asked about meeting her parents, Clara smiled but changed the subject, saying they're particular about traditions. I shrugged it off, too caught up in her warmth. The way she hummed off-key to my radio. I wanted them to like me, to see I'm good for her. I'm nervous but hopeful, picturing a dinner where I win them over. For now, I'm just happy, thinking we're building something real. Clara's presence in my studio apartment started as a soft invasion, a sweater left on my chair, a jar of her favorite jam in my fridge. By 2 months in, her books were stacked on my desk, and her sneakers sat by the door. I didn't mind at first. Seeing her stuff mixed with mine felt like we were weaving a life together. I'd come home from a long day tweaking logos for clients, and she'd be curled up on my couch, studying, her glasses slipping down her nose. Those moments warmed me, like I was building something solid, something my parents, married 30 years, would nod approvingly at. But the math wasn't adding up. My freelance checks barely covered rent, groceries, and the electric bill, which spiked with her staying over every night. I'd buy extra coffee her brand, or pick up takeout when she had late classes, never asking her to chip in. She'd say, "I'm drowning in student loans, you know," and I'd nod, not wanting to push. I'd grown up watching my dad fix cars to keep us afloat. I knew pride in providing. Still, my bank account groaned, and I started skipping my own lunches to balance it out. Then there were her words. Small needles I didn't notice until they piled up. We'd be washing dishes, me scrubbing, her drying, and she'd say, "Your place is so quaint. Back home, houses have history." Or we'd walk past a boutique, and she'd laugh. "That shirt's so American. Guys there dress sharper." I'd chuckle, thinking it was just her teasing, but the comments lingered like coffee stains. Once, over burgers at the diner, I told her about pitching to a big client, how it could be my break. She smiled, but her eyes drifted to her phone, and she said, "That's cute, but don't get too stressed. Family's what matters." I felt a pang, like my dreams were just noise to her. I tried talking about us, about her family's expectations, hoping to understand her world. She'd shrug, saying, "They're traditional. They want what's best for me." I'd ask what that meant for us, and she'd change the subject, offering to make tea or play one of my old vinyls. I let it slide, not wanting to rock the boat. My folks always said love means patience. So I poured myself into being steady, fixing her laptop when it crashed, staying up to quiz her for exams. But I started noticing she never asked about my day unless I brought it up, and even then, her nods felt rehearsed. One night, I came home late, my eyes burning from staring at a screen all day. Clara was sprawled on my bed, texting, not studying. I joked about needing a bigger place if she was moving in for good. Her laugh was sharp, and she said, "This is fine for now. Don't worry, I'm not picky." The "for now" stuck in my throat. I lay awake that night, her breathing soft beside me, wondering if I was enough. I thought of my mom, who'd tell me to trust my gut, but I pushed it down. I wanted to believe in us. In the way we dance in my cramped kitchen to songs only I knew the words to. So I kept going, paying for her coffee, ignoring the tightness in my chest, hoping her family would see me as more than the guy with the small apartment and big plans. Clara's text came on a chilly Saturday morning. Her parents wanted me over for dinner that night to meet them and her siblings, Luca and Sophia. My stomach did a flip, not just nerves, but a spark of hope. I'd been raised to believe meeting the family was a big step, the kind my folks took before they got engaged in their little Iowa town. I spent the morning Googling customs from Clara's country, learning to say thank you and delicious in her language. I stopped by the corner market, picking out a bottle of red wine and a box of chocolates, the kind my mum always brought to dinners. I wanted to get this right, to show I respected their roots. Their house was a 2-story brick place on the edge of town, with a neat lawn and a flag from their homeland by the door. I smoothed my button-up shirt, took a deep breath, and knocked. Clara answered, her smile tight, and ushered me in. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Novak, greeted me with firm handshakes, their eyes scanning me like I was a book they weren't sure they'd read. Luca, a stocky guy in his 30s, gave a curt nod, while Sophia, maybe 20, barely looked up from her phone. The living room smelled of spices, roasted meat, maybe herbs I couldn't name. I complimented it, stumbling over my practiced phrase, and Mrs. Novak's lips twitched, not quite a smile. Dinner was set on a long oak table, candles flickering like they were guarding secrets. I sat across from Clara, trying to catch her eye, but she was focused on passing dishes. They started talking in their language, fast and fluid, words I'd never grasp. I'd expected some of that. Clara warned me they leaned on tradition, but it didn't stop after the salad. I speared a piece of bread, smiling, waiting for a pause where I could jump in. None came. Luca laughed at something his dad said, and Sophia smirked, glancing my way. I asked Clara what was funny, keeping my voice light. "Oh, just a family story," she said, not meeting my gaze. I nodded, my fork heavier in my hand. I tried joining in, asking Mr. Novak about the framed photos on the wall, black and white shots of a village. Maybe their hometown, he answered in clipped English, from before we came here, then turned back to Luca. There was a wall I couldn't climb. I felt like I was back in high school, the new kid at the lunch table, pretending I belonged. Clara translated bits here and there. They're talking about Sophia's school or Dad's job, but it felt like crumbs, not the meal. I kept smiling, my cheeks aching, telling myself this was just how they were, that I'd win them over with time, like I had with tough clients who doubted my designs. Halfway through, Mrs. Novak served a dish she said was a family recipe, some kind of stew with dumplings. I took a big bite, praising it, maybe too loudly, and they all looked at me, Luca with a raised eyebrow, Sophia stifling a giggle. I wondered if I'd used the wrong fork or chewed too fast. "It's really good," I said, my voice smaller now. Mrs. Novak nodded, then started talking to Clara, her tone sharp. I caught my name once, but when I asked Clara later, she shrugged, saying, "Mum's just intense." My gut twisted, the stew sitting heavy. I thought of my dad, who'd always say, "Trust what you feel, son," but I pushed it down, not wanting to seem paranoid. By dessert, some pastry with sticky honey. I was drained. My smiles more reflex than real. They kept speaking their language, even when I asked about their move to America, hoping for common ground. Mr. Novak gave a short answer, then dove back into a story that made them all laugh, leaving me staring at my plate. Clara squeezed my hand under the table, but it felt like pity, not partnership. Driving home, the radio low. I replayed the night, their glances, my awkward phrases, the way I tried so hard for so little back. I told myself it was just one dinner, that families take time. Like my grandma took years to warm to my mum, but alone in my apartment, the quiet louder than usual. I couldn't shake the feeling I'd been weighed and found wanting. The night after the dinner at Clara's parents' house, I couldn't sleep. My studio felt too small, the hum of the fridge too loud. I kept seeing their faces, Luca's smirk, Sophia's quick glance, Miss S. Novak's tight nod, like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. I'd left my phone on record during the meal, a habit from client meetings, to catch ideas later. I'd forgotten about it until I was brushing my teeth. The app's still open, times tamped from when I'd stepped out to take a work call about a logo deadline. Something in me, maybe that gut instinct my dad always swore by, said to listen. I sat on my couch, the one Clara liked to sprawl across, and played the clip. It was muffled at first, clinking forks, low chatter in their language. I couldn't make out words, but the tone felt different when I wasn't in the room, sharper, like they dropped a mask. My call had lasted maybe 10 minutes, enough time for them to forget I existed. I paused the audio, my thumb hovering over delete. It felt wrong, like sneaking into someone's diary, but the dinner's coldness gnawed at me. I needed to know. There's this app I use for work that transcribes and translates audio for client feedback from overseas. I uploaded the clip, paid the rush fee, and waited, flipping through a dog-eared comic book without reading it. By morning, my inbox pinged with the file. I opened it at my kitchen counter, coffee going cold, and read the translation. My chest tightened with every line. Mr. Novak called me a broke dreamer, good for odd jobs. Miss S. Novak said I was too soft for Clara, not a real man like back home. Sophia chimed in. He tries so hard. It's pathetic. Luca laughed, saying I was useful for now, keeps her fed and cozy. Clara didn't speak, but her silence screamed loudest no defense, no pushback. I read it again, then a third time. Each word a paper cut, useful, pathetic. I thought of the wine I'd picked out, the phrases I'd practiced, the way I'd smiled through their walls. I'd been a prop in their story, not a person. My mind raced back to moments with Clara, her vague translations, her quick subject changes. Had she been part of this all along? I pictured my folks' kitchen table, where we talked through problems over meatloaf, and wished I could call them. But this felt too raw, too heavy for a phone call. I walked to the corner deli, the one where I grabbed bagels on tough days, and sat at the counter with a coffee I didn't drink. The old guy behind the register, Sam, his apron dusted with flour, asked about my day. I mumbled something about a rough week, and he slid me a free donut, saying, "Life's like dough, takes kneading to get it right." I nodded, grateful for the kindness, but my thoughts kept spiraling. I'd poured so much into Clara, fixed her laptop, bought her snacks, stayed up late sketching while she studied. Was it all a game to her? Back home, I stood by my desk, where her notebook still sat, her handwriting neat and foreign. I wanted to believe the translation was wrong, a glitch in the app, but the words fit too well with the dinner's chill. I thought of my grandpa, who'd built cabinets with his hands, and told me respect starts with seeing people clear. I hadn't seen Clara's family or her for what they were. I'd been so eager to belong. I'd ignored the signs, her shrugs, her family's glances, the way I felt smaller each time I left their orbit. By evening, anger had settled in, slow and heavy, like damp wood refusing to burn bright. I didn't cry, I'm not much for that, but my throat ached, like I'd swallowed something too big. I looked at my sketches pinned to the wall, dreams of a design firm, and felt a flicker of defiance. They could call me broke, soft, whatever. They didn't get to define me. But Clara's silence cut deepest, a betrayal I hadn't braced for. I sat there, the city buzzing outside my window, knowing I couldn't unhear those words, couldn't unfeel the truth. Tomorrow, I'd face her, but tonight, I just let myself sit with it, the hurt and the clarity, like an old friend I hadn't seen in years. The morning after I read the translated audio, my apartment felt like a stranger's. Clara was still asleep, her hair spilling over my pillow, unaware of the storm in my head. I made coffee. The machine's gurgle loud against my silence, and printed the transcript, its words stark on cheap printer paper. I didn't want to believe she'd let her family tear me down, but the truth was there, undeniable as the dishes we'd washed together. I thought of my mum, who'd say, "Face things head on, even when it hurts," and knew I couldn't wait. When Clara woke, stretching with a sleepy smile, I handed her the transcript. "Read this," I said, my voice steady but low, like I was holding glass. Her eyes skimmed the page, and color drained from her face. "Where'd you get this?" she asked, not denying it, just dodging. I told her about the recording, how I'd left my phone on by accident, how I'd needed answers after the dinner's cold shoulder. She shook her head, saying, "You spied on us." "That's not fair." My jaw tightened. "Fair," I said, after they'd called me pathetic, useful. While I'd poured my heart into fitting in, I pressed her, asking why she hadn't spoken up, why she'd let them mock me. Clara's voice rose, sharp and defensive. "It's just how they talk. You don't get our culture." I wanted to believe her, but the words her parents, her siblings, her silence cut too deep. I told her I deserved better, that I wasn't some prop for her comfort. She stood, arms crossed, saying I was overreacting, that I twisted a family joke into something ugly. Each excuse felt like a shove, pushing me further from the woman I danced with in my kitchen. Then my buzzer rang, jarring us both. It was Luca and Sophia, Clara's siblings, their faces tight with purpose. She'd texted them while we argued, calling in reinforcements. They barged in, Luca's voice booming. "You're recording us now. What's wrong with you?" Sophia sneered. "You're paranoid, making Clara miserable." I stood my ground, saying this was my home, my life they trashed. Luca stepped closer, his shoulder brushing a shelf, and my grandfather's old brass lamp, a gift he'd given me before he passed, crashed to the floor. The base dented, a jagged scar on its curve. "Oops," Luca said, no apology in his eyes. Sophia laughed, quick and cruel. I felt rage bubble, hot and unfamiliar, but kept it leashed. I pointed to the door, telling Clara to take her things and go, her siblings with her. She hesitated, eyes darting to the transcript still on the counter, then grabbed her bag. "You're throwing away something good," she said, voice wobbling, but it sounded rehearsed, like a line she'd practiced. Luca muttered something in their language, and they left, the door clicking shut like a full stop. I sank onto my couch, the broken lamp at my feet, its weight heavier than metal. I'd loved Clara, planned a future with her, and now my home felt violated. My trust cracked, like the lamp's dented edge. I picked up the pieces, my hands shaking, and set them on my desk next to sketches I'd stayed up late perfecting. I thought of my dad, who'd fix anything with patience cars, arguments, broken chairs, and wished I could borrow his calm. The anger was there, yes, but so was heartbreak. A quiet ache for the moments I thought were real. Her laugh over burnt toast, our talks about dreams. Had they all been lies? I swept the floor, the broom's rhythm grounding me, and realized I wasn't just cleaning up their mess. I was reclaiming my space. I'd given Clara my best, and they'd thrown it back. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I opened my laptop, checked my client deadlines, and started typing an email, each word a step away from their shadow. Tomorrow, I'd figure out what came next, but tonight, I just needed to breathe, to feel the weight of my own worth settling back in. The days after kicking Clara out were quiet but not peaceful. My apartment felt hollow. The dented lamp on my desk, a reminder of what I'd lost, not just her, but the trust I'd poured into us. I threw myself into work, sketching logos late into the night, the glow of my laptop a small anchor. I thought the worst was behind me, that her family's cruelty had spent itself in that confrontation. I was wrong. A week later, my inbox lit up with emails from 2 big clients, both cancelling contracts. I'd spent months pitching. One mentioned concerns about reliability, the other vague scheduling issues. My stomach sank. I'd never missed a deadline. I called the first client, a local bakery chain I designed menus for. The manager, usually chatty, was curt. "We heard you've been unstable lately," she said. "Some family reached out, said you're not dependable." I pressed for details, my voice tight, and she admitted Clara's father had called, spinning a story about me being erratic, unfit for business. The second client confirmed the same Luca had emailed them, claiming I'd harassed their sister. I sat at my kitchen counter, staring at my coffee mug, the one Clara used to steal for her tea. They weren't just mocking me now, they were dismantling my life, piece by piece. Then came the package. It arrived on a rainy afternoon, a small box left by my door. Inside was a cheap cleaning kit, sponges, a plastic brush, dollar store spray with a handwritten note, "For your cozy life, the Novaks." I recognized Sophia's sharp handwriting from a birthday card she'd once signed for Clara. My hands shook as I set it down, the words echoing their dinner table scorn. It wasn't just a prank, it was a blade, twisting the idea that I was nothing but a servant to them. I thought of my grandpa's lamp, now broken, and how he taught me to hold my head high. This felt like they were spitting on that. I walked to the park near my place, the one where I'd sketch on weekends, needing air. The benches were wet, so I stood under a dripping oak, watching kids splash in puddles. An older guy, maybe 60, tossed a frisbee to his dog nearby, his laugh carrying over the rain. I envied that ease, wished I could call my folks and unload, but I didn't want to worry them. Instead, I texted Jake, my buddy since high school, who'd always had my back. He came over that night with pizza, his usual fix for everything. I showed him the cleaning kit, the note, told him about the clients. His face hardened, but he kept it light, saying, "They're scared of you, man. You're still standing." Jake helped me draft emails to other clients, reinforcing my reliability, and we found online reviews I could point to, proof of my work ethic. It wasn't much, but it steadied me, like sweeping up after a storm. Clara texted once, a half-hearted, "I'm sorry, my family's intense," but nothing about stopping them. I didn't reply, just saved the message. A habit now, like keeping receipts for taxes. I started a notebook, jotting down dates, emails, the package, anything that might matter if this got worse. My dad used to say, "Cover your bases, son," when he'd check our old Chevy's oil, and I clung to that now. By the weekend, I was exhausted, my eyes gritty from late nights rebuilding pitches. I bought a new mug at the thrift store, plain white, nothing like Clara's old one, and used it for my morning coffee. It felt like a small rebellion, claiming my space again, but the anger lingered, not loud, but steady, like a pulse. They tried to break me, my work. My pride and I bent, sure, but I wasn't broken. I thought of Sam at the deli, his flowered apron, how he'd said life takes kneading. I was still in the mix, still shaping something, even if it hurt. I opened my sketchbook, started a new design, and let the lines carry me forward, one stroke at a time. A couple of weeks after the cleaning kit arrived, I thought I'd carved out a sliver of calm. I was at my favorite coffee shop, the one with mismatched mugs and jazz, humming low, meeting a new client to pitch a website design. I'd been careful, checking my email for more sabotage, but the air felt lighter. Then the door chimed, and Luca walked in, his eyes locking on me like a hunter's. My pulse spiked, but I kept talking, gesturing at my laptop. He didn't wait. "You're a liar," he said, loud enough for heads to turn. "You hurt Clara, made her life hell." The client froze, her pen hovering. I stammered, "This isn't the place." But Luca kept on, calling me a nobody who'd never fit in. People stared, their whispers sharp as needles. I apologized to the client, who left with a polite excuse, her card untouched on the table. I walked home, the city noise a blur, feeling stripped bare, like I'd forgotten my lines in a play. That evening, my landlord called, his voice gruff. "Got a complaint. You're causing trouble fights." Noise. True. I knew the Novaks' handiwork, Clara's parents twisting the knife again. They told him I was a problem tenant, risking my lease, my home. I explained it was a lie, my voice cracking, and he grunted, giving me a warning. I sat on my couch, the springs creaking under me, and pictured my dad's old toolbox, how he tightened a loose screw with care. I wanted that steadiness, but fear clung like damp clothes. I called Jake, who told me to document everything. We met at the diner, splitting fries like old times, and he pushed me to file a harassment complaint. I hesitated. Cops felt like a big step, but the coffee shop scene replayed, the eyes on me, judging. The next morning, I walked to the precinct, my sneakers scuffing the sidewalk. The officer listened, jotting notes as I showed texts. The cleaning kit note, client emails. "It isn't much," she said, "but it's a start." I left feeling lighter, not fixed, but like I'd planted a seed. Back home, I taped a new sketch to my wall, a logo I'd been tweaking. It wasn't much either, but it was mine. A quiet promise I'd keep going, no matter how they tried to shrink me. The weeks after Luca's coffee shop outburst felt like walking on cracked ice. Waiting for the next break, I kept my head down, sketching designs, checking my locks. Then Clara's cousin, Anna, AM, messaged me on Instagram. Her words a shock of kindness. She said the Novaks had turned on Clara, furious she'd wavered in cutting me off. They'd sent her to live with relatives back home, their control tightening like a vice. Anna apologized, horrified by her family's venom. And I believed her. She sounded like my aunt, who'd always call out nonsense at family dinners. I thanked her, a weight lifting, knowing Clara was gone, her family's shadow fading. I leaned on Jake, who crashed at my place one weekend, bringing beers and bad puns. We swapped out my old locks for new ones, the drill's wine a kind of therapy. I painted my walls a soft blue, hung new curtains from the thrift store, and moved my desk to catch morning light. Each change felt like stitching a wound, slow, deliberate. I landed a contract with a local theater, designing posters that would glow under marquee lights. It wasn't my dream firm yet, but it paid the rent, and Sam at the deli gave me a free bagel to celebrate, his grin wide as ever. I started seeing a therapist, a woman with a voice like my mum's, calm and no nonsense. She had me list what I'd ignored, Clara's shrugs, her family's jabs, my own need to please. It stung, like cleaning a cut, but it helped me see I'd been chasing their approval, not my own. I'd grown up watching my folks build a life from scratch, their hands calloused but hearts open, and I'd forgotten that strength in me. Therapy wasn't magic, but it was a mirror, showing me I'd been enough all along. One night, I sat on my couch, now draped with a blanket my grandma knitted, and opened my sketchbook. I drew, not for clients, but for me, a logo of a tree, roots deep, branches wide. I thought about what I'd learned. Love shouldn't shrink you. I'd let the Novaks' scorn and Clara's silence chip away at my worth because I wanted to belong. But belonging starts inside. Knowing you're no one's pawn. Red flags aren't quirks, they're alarms. I missed them, craving a place at their table. But now, I trust my gut, choose who gets my heart. That's my freedom, my blueprint for what's next. I don't know if the Novaks will try again, but I'm ready. My apartment's mine, my work's growing, my roots holding firm. I called my folks last Sunday, told them bits of the story over coffee. Their voices were steady through the line. They didn't judge, just listened. Like always, I'm not healed, not fully, but I'm here sketching, breathing, living. That's enough for now. Thanks so much for watching until the end. It really means a lot. Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who leave the deepest scars. If you've ever carried pain that your family never saw, feel free to share your story below. Your voice might help someone feel a little less alone.